I'd like to call on a print reporter, Joshua.
I'm Joshua Mackel with Reuters. Thank you so much. Something I think many of you saw, or we all saw in Pope Francis, was that he was a very free man. He kind of knew who he was, and he spoke very plainly and very openly, I think sometimes in ways that might have caused you all some trouble. And I wonder how you see, well, Pope Francis spoke very freely also about the situation in the U.S. church and in U.S. politics. He addressed President Trump pretty directly. He called the plan to deport millions of migrants a disgrace. I'm wondering if you think Pope Leo is the same kind of free man, if he might speak in those kinds of terms about what he sees as problems with the U.S. political system. And do you hope or want that President Trump might come for the inauguration of the Petrine ministry here in Rome?
Why not? Why not?
I would say on the question of, is there the same type of freedom in his heart and soul that was in Pope Francis? I believe yes. But that's different from asking, is he going to express that freedom in the same exact manner or the same pathways and contours that Pope Francis did? It was said many times in the general sessions leading up to the conclave, and I think I could say this much without giving anything away. We're looking for someone following the pathway of Francis, but we're not looking for a photocopy. And I believe Pope Leo will not be a photocopy of Pope Francis. I do believe he'll be just as genuine, but he'll have a different manner in expressing that and bringing the gospel into the church and into the life of the world.
I think it's important to remember that when we have the appointment of a bishop in the church, we don't talk about a replacement. We talk about a successor. That's a very important distinction to make. And that is what we were looking for as well. Who could bring forward not only the ministry and life and tradition of Francis, but everything that preceded him, especially in that pivotal moment in the life of the Church at the Second Vatican Council. So we were looking for not a replacement, but a successor.
We are unsurprisingly very, very eager to find out about the man, Pope Leo. Pope Leo, rightly so. I am, we are, you are. His personality, his temperament. Of course, it's the office of the successor of St. Peter that endures. This wasn't our first rodeo. We've been through this 268 times, okay? And the church goes on. Did you detect yesterday? You were there. We bishops were behind the drapes, but we could hear the most ecstasy from the crowd is when the announcement was made, I bring you good news, habemus papam. We have a pope. Ecstasy, enthusiastic applause. They didn't know who it was. As a matter of fact, they said, we don't really care. We have a pope. The chair is no longer empty. There will be a man at the window on Sunday. We have a pope. Papa is back, all right? Now, that doesn't eradicate our desire to find out the personality of this current pope. But it's that office of the successor of Peter that is supreme. And each one, you got to make gnocchi with the dough you got, as our Italian friends will say. So obviously the personality and the temperament will have a lot to do with it. But boy, oh boy, it's that office, it's that charism. It's that dovere, as the Italians say, that sacred duty and responsibility that is really of the essence.
I also think that it's important in looking at Pope Leo to give him space to grow into the office. He's never been Pope before. And so while he comes with a rich heritage, a missionary heritage, a religious heritage, he's going to grow into the office and seize opportunities that perhaps were not ever seen in his life before. There's a tendency for all of us to believe that we can capture tomorrow by looking at yesterday. And I think that Pope Leo will surprise us as he brings his gifts and confronts the challenges and responds in grace to the needs of the church.
I think that Cardinal Wilton has a very important point. With the news cycles, we have to know every bit about Pope Leo now. He's less than 24 hours old as Pope. Give him a chance to reveal his personality, and you and others who are in the media can do that just watching his actions and his talks and the way he engages people. I'd like to see it develop more before we suddenly make judgments.
Joshua, thinking about your question, we all heard before we started voting a rather extensive conference that was given by somebody I think you probably remember, Father Cantalamessa, now Cardinal Cantalamessa, who's I think around 90 years old, but still a very dynamic and thoughtful speaker. And towards the end of his conference, he gave advice that all of us heard, just in case. Advice to the one who's going to be elected. And he said, be yourself. Now, lest that seem to be just simply a life as a selfie attitude, I heard it in terms of a novel that really fascinated me at different times in my life, called Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. And in it, this wise teacher is tutoring two princesses, this tribe, and one who is very bright, very rational, is questioning about the gods, because it's set in pre-Christian Greece, or Macedonia, really. And the princess says, why won't the gods come to us? But by this time in the novel, you realize the author's talking about God. Drop the S and make it a capital G. And he says, the gods will not come to us until we have a face. They don't want to waste their time talking to masks. So I think Pope Leo heard that call as Bob Prevost, and he's going to carry it out with the gifts of grace and nature that God's given him. So I don't think there's a worry about him being a carbon copy of anybody.